what has happened now is that the people are finally beginning to see things for what they are. And people are now beginning to ask questions. And they're like, hey, why is our food supply so bad? Hey, why do we only have a handful of pharmaceutical companies? Why is it that all our penicillin isn't manufactured anywhere in the West, but it's only being manufactured in 3 companies in China? Right, I've got nothing against China, I actually don't. But like, surely we should be able to produce our own generic medications in our own countries. But why can't we do it? Talking about manufacturing, is it really that much cheaper to do things overseas, given that a lot of this stuff is done by machine anyway? Why aren't we manufacturing here? Why is it that we're shipping our iron ore over to another country and then shipping back the steel when we know that the real profit margin is made in the value add? Why are we doing that? Right? What's happened to our shipping industry? What's happened to our car manufacturing? Why can't we get clothes made here? Right? Again, food, banking, the whole lot. People are now asking questions. And what it shows is people do not have any faith or trust in media. They don't have any faith or trust in the government. They don't trust the big corporations. Why do we only have Coles and Woolworths?
Before we start, we need to tell you up front we are not a licensed financial planning, accounting or law firm. This is simply an education program which will give you factual information. We do not give any general or specific advice around finance, business, investing, options trading or anything else. That is not what this presentation does. Please see a licensed financial planner when it comes to any investment advice you need.
Let's get into the show, The Greater Wealth, where, look, we talk about how politics and finance, how they come together and the big old mess it makes. With what's gone on in the last week, the last few days, just as say minor sort of changes in the free world and all of that, how has it affected the world of finance there?
Big time. So, if you haven't been following the news or living under a rock, Trump is in power. And I think what's really fascinating...
Really? How did that happen? I never saw that.
I'm glad you're sitting down for that, Shaq.
It's on the down low.
This is the fascinating thing is everybody was kind of sitting on the sidelines of this, finding out which way it's going to go, because we watched a lot of politicians eat humble pie back in 2015 when Trump did come to power in 2016, and then kind of regret some of the ambassadorial sort of relations. They're going, I wish I hadn't said such and so, especially with social media as it is. And funny enough, we have an ambassador of Australia quickly deleting all his comments that were anti-Trump.
Oh, hang on, that's censorship, right?
Self-censorship while his mates in Canberra are talking about a misinformation act.
No.
So it's really been fascinating, the other nations' response to what's going on.
I mean, red just looks so good on me. It really does.
Now, I'm going to excuse myself in a moment to go get up. I've got some merchandise as well I might put on.
You guys really want to make this a fashion show, I can tell.
We might want to do that. Now, questions and comments coming in, already fantastic to see that. So, of course, Edge, we love to be, have our interaction here. So please get your comments and questions in. Good to see us to say you there, Shaq. Well, look, for yourself as an international businessman, no, not that one, not that, no. No, that's my Scottish hat, but all right, hang on. Whoop, there we go. I'll get that one for later. Doing international business, as you do, okay, what have you seen, what changes have you seen immediately in the world of finance?
Well, as I used to, I don't really do much in the way of business anymore. But look, the market's rallied. Bitcoin's gone up through the roof on the day. I'm not sure where it is now, but on the election day, I think it hit 115,000 Aussie or something like that. So that's been pretty phenomenal. We've already seen the European nations are all now trying to suck up to America. The great Labour Party of the UK decided to reject Nigel Farage's offer to try to mend relationships. So that's going to be very interesting how that plays out, because the Labour Party of the UK are not going to do themselves any favour. They've already done an abysmal job over there. In fact, from what there was reports that 100 members of the Labour Party or something were going to fly to America to help with the Kamala Harris campaign. So guess what? UK Labour? You're in for some serious pain, and you deserve every bit of it. Vladimir Putin has
Yes.
released a statement stating that the West is not our enemy. So there's already
Yep.
talks of those conflicts potentially becoming less severe or being resolved. And as far as the domestic situation in the United States, people have asked me many times over the years, where would I suggest that they might consider opening a branch office if they want to get exposure to the North American market? And if you haven't really got a lot of exposure to the United States, you'll hear things like Delaware, Nevada, Wyoming, places like that as a place to set up an office. And what I would always say to them is, actually, you may find yourself being better off going through Canada, because even though the Canadian corporate tax rates are horrendous, if you're a foreigner, you get access to these look-through entities that are designed really to encourage the international money to come there. And the Canadian immigration system is a lot easier to navigate than the American one is. And of course, given the free trade agreements between those two nations, you get access to the United States market. So that's generally been what I've said. Now, this I think is the first time that I can ever remember saying, if Donald Trump does things that he's talking about, and there's no question in my mind that he will, because he's going to have access, he's going to control the House and the Senate. If that's the case, then I actually think the United States now looks like a very attractive place to do business. And if you're thinking about opening up a business or a branch office of a business that you already have or something like that, the United States now looks like one of the more competitive and attractive places to actually operate out of. The regulatory burdens are still very high in the United States, but hopefully Elon Musk and him will work through that. But based on taxes and ease of doing business, the US is now as attractive as some of the more competitive places in the European Union. Interestingly, as well, as talking about 15% corporate rate of taxation on companies that produce goods within the United States. So there's a lot of opportunities over there. I think you're going to see enormous growth. And when they say that they're about to enter into the golden age in America, there is no question in my mind that that's going to be the case.
Right, the 50s are back again, right, when it comes to the US. Okay, look, Derek.
Well, actually, sorry, if I can just interrupt you just real quick. So it's actually interesting you say that, because that's actually something that is a bit of a misconception.
Right.
The 50s were great for families and things like that, but if you actually have a look at the economy during the 50s and the 60s, for that matter, the US actually went through a whole heap of recessions, but they were mild. So it actually wasn't quite as good as you think. But perhaps if you look at the big growth we had in the wild 80s, I would expect that you could see something like that return.
I see. I look at it I'm a car guy, so I look at the cars of the 50s and 60s and go, okay, America was doing pretty well right there. So, all right, now you're the man with the graphs in front of you. Okay, well, many of them. You've seen a lot go on. You've seen what's happened with crypto, obviously, and I think that's a big talking point. Let's be honest. Where do you want to go on this, mate? Because where do we start?
Let's go through a few of the nation's responses to that. Yeah, that's a great idea. And let's dissect this, because what happened within the 12 hours of the winner being declared, Donald Trump Jr. tweeted that this is amazing. Hamas has called for an immediate end to the war. Now that was huge. That was like first off the bat there.
Hang on. Trump will start all the wars. Don't we know that? Come on, that's what MSN told us. That is what CNN told us. That's what NBC told us. That's what all of these pundits told us.
Meanwhile, Putin's been carefully guarding his words through the whole US election process and saying, I'm open to a peace solution here. He's been open to a peace solution for a very long time. But there's been questions as to who's been pushing the whole agenda. Is it NATO behind it all that's been wanting war? Let's have a listen to his statement here. It's really, really fascinating to get the download. Okay. He makes a very interesting choice of words, which I'll pick up on after we watch this.
Okay.
To a certain extent, the moment of truth is coming. The previous world order is irreversibly becoming a thing of the past. One could say has become a thing of the past, and the shaping of the new world order is become the scene of uncompromising fight. Uncompromising, first and foremost, for the reason that it's not even the battle for power or geopolitical influence. It's a clash of the very principles that would be the foundation between the relation, for the relation of the countries at the next historical stage. And its outcome will define whether all of us jointly can build a world that would allow everyone to develop. and to solve the outstanding contradictions based on mutual respect of cultures and civilization without coercion and use of force.
Now, this is fascinating. He's talking about this reference of the New World Order. This is a term that I picked up on back when the Clintons were in power. They would use it in so many different speeches. And I would sit there go, what exactly are you talking about, this term New World Order, New World Order? You keep bringing it up over and over again. Well, it looks like this New World Order is done. It's going towards this. And it's funny to hear Putin talk about it now. And he's talking about we need to be based on mutual respect of cultures. I actually personally, it's my personal opinion that he and Trump both have one thing in common, a value in common that makes them actually get on fairly well, and that is the fact that they are into sovereignty of their own nations. And respecting, going, you do what you want in your nation and have self-governance, we'll do what we want in ours. And I think they are strong leaders who respect that mutually. I think the other side, the left, have been pushing all the blame on Russia. They cop it left, right and center. It's Russia's fault. This has happened, that has happened. So this is a really interesting change of events. Now, keep in mind, guys, this is where it gets really interesting. Who is Russia in conflict with at the moment?
Well,
Ukraine.
No, I pause because I want to say NATO. Okay, I think Ukraine's absolutely irrelevant in this conversation in so many ways.
But this is where it gets really interesting. Who is Ukraine reliant on for their communications right now?
Well, hang on, would it be Elon Musk?
And who is Leon Loss working with at the moment?
Oh,
you see where this all goes? Because those drones need internet connections to work and all that sort of thing. So this changed the whole politics, the geopolitical of it right now. The fact that the force that has formed the Trump alliance here with Musk, Tulsi Gabbard, Kennedy, you know,
Kennedy,
to a lesser
Republican. Look at that.
You had Dana, I forget his surname, Dana up there.
Yes.
Doing a speech.
If you had said that 10 years ago, that a Kennedy would become a Republican.
Yeah.
And not like an extended Kennedy, like Maria Shriver that Arnold Schwarzenegger married, but an actual Kennedy, the son of RFK.
Yep.
If you had the nephew of JFK, if you had said that person from that family would become a Republican, nobody would believe you. I mean, Paul Keating may as well join the bloody Liberal Party now because the Labour Party's left him behind. I mean, it's just the whole thing's just ridiculous. But talk about Ukraine for a moment. So there were reports, I think it was you, Derek, that brought it to my attention that they come from the major private equity firms in the world, and I'm not going to name right now, but I'm sure everyone knows who they are. Bidding for contracts worth hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild the Ukraine. Now, I've got to tell you that when I was in Africa, I was actually astounded by how much wealth was there and how much poverty was there. And I saw this report from an African lady who I can't remember who she was addressing. I'm not sure if she was addressing the United Nations or if she was addressing the European Union or who she was addressing, but she actually made mention of the fact that $10 trillion worth of wealth from Africa is brought out of Africa predominantly to European nations and to America, and all of those profits are generated in those countries and not generated in Africa. And yet the Africans are always fighting, and they don't seem to ever have an issue trying to get weapons or anything else. So those of you that can remember that old movie with Nicolas Cage, was it Lord of War or whatever it was called? In the end credits of that movie, it actually states something that's factually true, which is that the world's biggest arm dealers are the 5 members of the Security Council of the United Nations.
Really?
So there's no question in my mind that there are people out there who are struggling to survive, that are just trying to live. These are our fellow human beings who are having their opportunities taken away from them, that are forced to live impoverished lives because of the greed of just a handful of people. I'm a capitalist, I always will be. That's not capitalism. No. That's corruption. That is crony capitalism. That's exactly what we see here when we see all the major corporations taking over different aspects of our lives and forcing out competition. This is all the same sort of thing. And look, I don't know why exactly Russia went into the Ukraine. We've barely been told anything about it. There were reports that Russia was unhappy that people that lived on the eastern parts of the Ukraine felt that they were more attached to Russia than they were the Ukraine, and that they were then classified as domestic terrorists and all that sort of stuff. Look, I don't know. But currently, one of the plans that we've heard is that they're going to create a demilitarized zone that will be patrolled by the military, predominantly funded by Europe and America, in order to have a buffer zone between Russia and the Ukraine. So whatever the result is, I think that it's very telling that we have had to put up with what we've had to put up with for the last 4 years, plus the decades before that. And one man, Donald Trump, has been able to get in there, win the support of the people, because the people know that there's something that's not right. And as Derek said, overnight, Hamas says, "Oh, we better end this war. We better resolve this conflict with Israel." Just like that. Russia all of a sudden says, "Yeah, I'm very openly." The media starts saying, "Oh, yeah, he wants a peace deal." Just like that. So I think that we're actually in for a much more stable world. I think, we'll never be able to measure what could have happened, but I think we were looking at a pretty bleak future had things have continued the way that they were going.
Look, I agree. I think that, I was very bleak. I was thinking, honestly, my real thought was, if the Democrats steal this election, then we are heading for World War III. That's honestly how I felt, because I thought, okay, everyone out there who's fighting for territory, whatever side they come from, when they see such weakness and such a puppet there standing for effectively the leader of the free world, well, certainly in representing them, obviously they're a puppet, but why would they stop? Why would you, if there's no force? Whereas I think that this is the greatest move for peace that I could possibly imagine. Before I sort of jump off that, I was just going to ask if we could bring up some more comments on the screen. I see some great comments from Josh. Really appreciate that, mate. So Australia was buying nuclear subs off the US. This is just reading Josh's comment. Talks about cancelling that because Albo is dirty. Trump got elected. Haven't heard that one.
I hope he does. I really hope he does, actually. Because if there's anything that'll cost him the next election, it'll be doing that.
Yeah.
Because where's he going to get his? Where's he going to get his the subs from? You can't go back to France. You've just burned the US. What are you going to do? The UK can't provide you with anything. That leaves you with who? Russia? Well, Russia can't provide you anything. So that leaves us with who? We're going to buy our military equipment from China? Oh, well done, Albo. I haven't heard that, so I'm just basing it on what Josh has said. But I'll tell you what, if Albo cancels that deal with America, I hope he does. I hope he does, so that we can just get rid of him.
But then if he buys the Chinese one... Yes.
20% off this weekend.
That's right. And you know what? The great thing is, if you do buy Chinese subs, great news, because all the computer equipment will already have pre-load download of TikTok. I mean, fantastic, right? Perfect. That's the way we want to go forward.
It's really interesting to watch how Europe is responding now. Take a look at this next clip in a moment. We're going to be having a look at how they're kind of backpedaling as far as their relationship with the United States is concerned too. Take a look.
I would not say discuss, but we touched upon yesterday. It's the whole topic of LNG. We still get a lot of LNG via Russia, from Russia. And why not replace it by American LNG, which is cheaper for us and brings down our energy prices, but it's something where we can get into a discussion, also what our trade deficit is concerned. So engage, look at common interest, and then negotiate.
There you go. The President of the European Union saying, hey, let's get our oil now from America as Trump goes.
That must hurt her so much. She must be in so much pain. You can just feel her grimacing, going, "Oh no!" What happened? Donald Trump warned them, and specifically warned Germany, and Germany laughed at him. And then look at what happened.
Right. Look, Merkel was just such. I'm going back a little bit, but the damage she did to Germany, it will take a. There's only one other fella that damaged, Germany as badly as she did, as far as I'm concerned.
That's got a little bit far. Come on now.
That's how much I dislike the woman and what she did, but never mind. Okay. Why? Okay, this is again why when government don't act like businesses, right? Okay, she's already saying that they've been spending too much on energy when they knew that there was a cheaper alternative. Isn't that interesting, right? Whereas if you've got someone who's got that private enterprise sort of thought about them, the process about them, they're going to look for the better price solution for their energy. It's interesting they do that. Now I'm finding where I'm going on this. Work with me here. Is the fact of Musk. Now Musk is coming into place. to actually reorganise this sort of thing and to make the whole government more efficient. This is all coming together, right?
There's so much coming together. This is changing the world on so many fronts. And then you've got Kennedy, who's also going for the pharmaceuticals, right? And that is a big one because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Who drives the media in the United States? This show brought to you by, right? You see it all over in their advertising. And you don't see that open advertising here in Australia. We're a bit desensitized to that because I think there's regulation in place that you can't do that. But in the United States, you will get open drug advertising from pharmaceuticals on their free-to-air television.
Oh, well, here's how they do it in Australia. I mean, I was talking to my doctor a couple of years ago and he was telling me about his lovely trip that he gets every year to Hamilton Island for 10 days with his family that a particular drug company actually pay for. It's not bribe at all. I mean, but if he does actually hit particular targets with promoting a particular drug that might be on the PBS and might be for anxiety, for argument's sake, if he promotes that enough and gets enough prescriptions, he gets a free trip with his family for 10 days to Hamilton Island every year. That's how they do it in Australia. There you go.
Well, we were paying $1,000 a night, I think, for a few nights at this. Actually, wasn't a terrible hotel, but it wasn't that kind of nice. But anyway, it was this lovely hotel in Queenstown, New Zealand, and it's a bit pricey, but we're only there for a few days. Gorgeous place, and one of the days I get down there, and there's this huge group of people. I'm like, okay, what are you guys all here for? Oh, we're dentists. I'm like, oh, okay, like in New Zealand, in Queenstown. No, we're all from Australia. They flew us over here to Queenstown. I'm like, no wonder the hotel rooms are so bloody expensive, because I looked on Kayak or whatever, and like normally the hotel rooms are only like $300-400. And I'm like, why am I paying so much? Because they had booked out all the rooms so they could have this conference. Really? So it's the same. We also see that with insurance companies and banks and all sorts of other places. But as I've long said, you look at the food supply, right? And this is my big fear for Australia, is especially with the talk of introducing some of these, the cultural heritage laws and all that sort of stuff. What it does is it puts a lot of pressure on our small farmers, and so they struggle to compete. Who is able to compete and comply are the biggest corporations. And what you then see is you see a consolidation. So if you look at the United States, whilst there are a lot of family farms, they are generally under contract, and they're very, very unfair contracts. And you basically have 4 or 5 companies that control the food supply in the United States, both meat and vegetable products. You have 4 or 5 major banks, you've got 4 or 5 major airlines, 4 or 5 major insurance companies. You've got 2 major telecommunication companies in the United States. We've got 2 major communication companies here, and then you've got 3 or 4 others that sort of piggyback off of them. If you look at our grocery stores, we have 2 majors and perhaps 4 that you can kind of think off top of your head. Same thing in the United States. You've got 2 majors, or you've probably got 4 or 5 majors that control the whole setup, right? Fast food, you've only got 5 companies that own most of it. You've got 7 companies that control 90% of the world's media. Now, how does this happen in an otherwise free market economy? How does it happen that all these small businesses can't compete? How is that happening? Why is that happening? Well, it's because they're able to get government favour. And that's why you don't see efficiency in government, because they don't care about efficiency, because the lack of efficiency is where they are able to make money for themselves. I'll be right back in like 2 seconds.
The question that just came up there too about the fact of, if I can bring up the comment about Elon there. Derek, I'd like your thoughts on this, mate. So will Elon and his efficiency task force help to reduce the national debt? Will it make any real difference?
I think it will, because you're bringing in the mindset of 2 big business minds into the whole political space. You've got Trump as a businessman, you've got Elon as a businessman, and they're very quick to see inefficiencies and what's costing the US a lot.
Sure.
You've also got, on the same time, a proposal that the US will buy, I think it's up to 5% of Bitcoin that exists.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah,
and they're doing that to, of course, reduce their inflation. This is why the crypto markets have gone bang lately, because they want to move on that and kind of do that as a storage of wealth for them.
Okay, kind of takes me where I was going to go and ask you about the Fed and how that all links in.
Let's have a look at the Fed. Very interesting sort of frosty response here from one of the journalists' questions in terms of how they see the election of Donald Trump. Let's take a look.
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
And so it's quite a bit of a frosty response. Now, the Federal Reserve is an independent body. They are not a government agency,
Sure,
like it looks, how it appears with all the logos and all that sort of stuff. But that kind of response, is he just happy that Trump has gotten in? Is he just happy by the question that Journo's asking? Is it a combination of both, or is it option 4? Maybe he had a fight with his wife before getting on the front of the cameras. I mean, what's going on here with the Fed? This is going to change things, because Trump was very, in his first presidency, very pushing in terms of, hey, I want the Fed to do this, I want the Fed to do that. He's already at the Bitcoin 2024 conference said that he would fire on day one Gary Gensler, who was the head of the SEC.
and how popular was that comment?
The crowd went nuts because, of course, there's been so many cases by the SEC against the crypto world in relation to Ripple, that case that's gone on for 4 years. And there's also been Coinbase. They've really taken them over, and people are asking, we just want simple regulation, especially the crypto space, as to where we stand with this, so we know what the rules are.
Of course.
And so this has been fought, resisted by the traditional forms of finance. And it's really interesting to see, does this change the landscape in terms of how the government relates to the Fed as well?
Oh, look, I think
I know
it
what
does. Yeah, you go on. Yeah, what was that?
Look, I don't want to jump to the defence of the Fed here, but I think we're sort of slightly overstating things. Don't put me here by myself. Not while I'm defending the Fed of all things. No, I think you're slightly overstating things. And Jerome Powell, he doesn't have to resign because Donald Trump asked him to, and also, look, Donald Trump doesn't have the authority. You might argue that he should. I would argue that actually no government really should have the authority to order the Fed to do or not to do anything. The Fed has a specific role, and I know that the people around us will go, oh, it's a big private, thing. Look, I don't think it actually is a privately owned bank in the way that people say it is. I think that's a bit of a misunderstanding of the actual process. Having said that, I would have absolutely no issues whatsoever with the Fed being ended altogether. And that goes as well for the Reserve Bank of Australia and all the other central banks. Because as far as I'm concerned, the flow of the money supply could be well determined by the free market without their intervention.
Yep.
Well, that may come true.
Let's hope so.
Because I think there's a lot of agencies who are re-looking at their future. All the three-letter agencies, the DOJ, the IRS, the WHO, because Trump pulled 20 million back in the day when he was president, saying, what are we getting out of the WHO? And all
what are we?
Well, there is a lot of shake-up going on internally in the United States, which will have a flow-on effect internationally.
Okay, can we fire back to
so what I think that you will likely see is, if you look back before the Fed existed, there were basically all of the commercial banks, of which you had a lot of small banks, right? Our group, all the audience members that are watching right now, we could all get together, start a little bank, and we could issue our own currency, right? Mm-hmm. Now, there was some issue because all these banks were issuing their own currency, and there was a lot of fraudulent and forged and all that. Technology's changed. So I think what we've seen is a push towards a globalized currency. We've seen that with the euro. And in my personal opinion, the euro is an epic disaster. The euro, I honestly don't think the euro will be around the way it is now in 20 or 30 years from now, because it's just not sustainable. It doesn't work. It has hurt countries immeasurably. Like countries like Greece, for example, should have been able to lower their currency in order to attract inward investment, and then to be able to make their exports more attractive to make up for the imports that they had. But instead, they've ended up with these horrendous debt levels and everything else. You could say the same thing with Italy, Spain, but the whole thing. So the euro hasn't worked very well. The US dollar, yes, it works very well. I'm not gonna say anything too negative about it, other than to say that how long is it going to be before the Middle Eastern countries, especially with the growth of the BRICS nations, how long is it going to be before the Middle Eastern countries say, why are we pegging our currency to the US dollar? Why don't we free float our currency, given that we've actually got wealth that we're generating from our oil and energy and everything else, right? So I think you're actually going to start to see a whole heap new currencies. Now, I actually would support that. I actually think that's fantastic. But when we look at crypto crypto was something that I'd never thought about 20 years ago. And so now what you're actually going to see is a whole heap of alternative currencies and alternative places to keep your wealth and to store your wealth other than using fiat currency. And that's going to dramatically weaken these fiat currencies. And I think that's actually a good thing because the fiat currencies are out of control. And what the bankers are doing, I will give them the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't deliberate. But what they've done is they've impoverished people. And did anyone see the report that just came out recently, the last few days, that said that the big banks in this country are benefiting an extra $200,000 on every home loan over the life of that home loan because of the overcharging of interest? So where's all that money going? It's going to the banks, and the banks are then flowing it through to their shareholders, some of which are overseas. I think it's terrible. We have in this country people who are struggling to survive. I've talked about this before, with our older people who, don't have enough to eat sometimes, that, are going without meals to feed their cats or dogs, who don't have access to proper medical facilities and, all of the sorts of things that would give them some dignity. Our children are failing in schools. Our healthcare system isn't operating properly. And we're told that there's not enough money to go around. I don't think so. I think our money's been misappropriated. And that used to be a left-wing thing to say. Now it's the people on the right that are saying, how about we have a bit more efficiency and a bit more competition into this marketplace?
Yep, very, very true. A lot of great comments coming through. And
there's the report right there.
Brilliant to see that report there. Thank you very much for popping that up. Let's just fire back a little bit, though, if we may, because a couple of really good comments came in. Let's look at one of Josh's there, if we may, and have a discussion on that. All right, so what have we got there? Bring up the screen. Okay, the only way to get, this is from Josh, the only way to get rid of the Fed would be to repeal the Federal Reserve Act. Okay, now for those who understand how hard that would be, any comment?
I think the future of the Fed is really under question.
I agree.
And I think
it should go.
I have heard prophets say it will go.
Right.
And when they said it some years ago, I was kind of, I threw it out. I was very careful who I told it to because I thought they'll think this is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going, look at it now. It doesn't sound so ridiculous at all. There are already technological solutions coming on board that can, that people are asking, why do we need it?
We don't need it.
Why do we need this? And I think, again, it changes the relationship, if that is the case, of how the US government would relate to the bank as well in terms of distribution of currency. It's a big game changer. Couple that with what Trump is proposing in terms of his tax reforms.
Yep.
Things are getting a big shake-up. So that industry in itself is really looking down and going, what can we expect now?
Well,
let's talk about the Fed for a minute. Let's talk about the Fed. Let's talk about money creation. So people think that the Fed, stop putting me up here by myself, Travis. People think that the Fed creates and destroys money. They do to some degree, but the majority of this money is actually created and destroyed by commercial banks. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole money creation process, but suffice to say, the banks are actually lending money that they don't have. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. When you go to the bank and you borrow money, it's not what you think. The banks, people think that, okay, the bank's using the depositor's money to make a loan to you. That's not what happens. They just do it essentially as a book entry. Now, all they have to do is they have to be able to settle that, but they know that they've got a certain amount of money coming in every day and a certain amount of money going out every day. So as long as they're able to settle it, they can put that credit into your account and the money just keeps circulating because it's pretty much a closed loop system, right? The money will keep circulating around all the banks. So they'll get it back and it doesn't really matter. In the meantime, they're charging you interest on something that never actually existed in the first place.
Well, you know what? Right? I had my questions about this. I had my questions about this, and the thing that changed my mind and changed my world forever is actually doing one of Derek's courses actually at Blu Sky Factory. Right? And again, this is another reason why we have you here, mate, because Blu Sky Factory, the education is power. Okay, knowledge is power, as we say many, many times. Okay, and by doing your course and opening me up to the ideas that we're talking about now, opening me up to the fact that I, like most people, assumed that the money that's deposited into banks by all the individual people, that was the money being lent out. When I found out that wasn't actually the case, because I kind of, look, I thought so, but I thought I need someone to confirm this for me. And then you went through, and with the course, I actually got to see the truth. It is mind-bending. It changes your whole perspective on how the whole game works.
This is one of the things that one of my accountants pointed out to me recently, and I thought, oh my goodness, I hadn't seen this. Is that, you know how when people want to move money from their bank to a crypto exchange to buy crypto,
Yep.
you know how they hold it up 24 hours and that sort of stuff, which does every crypto trader or investor its head in, because they can see an opportunity in the market. They want to buy it now, this sort of stuff. One of the reasons they do that is it means that the bank has less money to lend out.
Oh.
Now, they say it's for your own protection against scams and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
But it means it actually reduces their ability to lend out more money because it's not being stored in a savings account.
Didn't think
it's going into a different asset.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I thought they were just holding onto your money so they could make the interest on it for that extra amount of time. There's so many, different.
But hang on a minute though, Derek. The cash doesn't just. If I'm understanding what you're saying, the money is leaving the banking system and going into the crypto exchange, but the actual currency itself that's gone to the crypto exchange, somebody's receiving that cash, right?
No. No.
Well, if you buy a Bitcoin off me, right? If I'm on the other side of your transaction in the exchange, right? So you buy the crypto off me, you deposit your cash into an account. I sell you the crypto. I receive the cash from the exchange.
If you're in exchange, yes.
Right. So the exchange has to bank that money somewhere.
It does, yes.
So presumably that's still going to be in the banking system, right?
Well, we had a look at, remember those bank collapses last year? They were dealing with very specific banks that were crypto special.
Sure.
Right? And they had a bit of a shake-up because of the drawdown and that sort of stuff. Not all the banks, I think, traditional banks are going to be dealing with these crypto exchanges. And when they are international, right, where are they doing their business? The little domestic banks, big four, not necessarily so happy that some of the big crypto exchanges are depositing their money elsewhere.
That's a good point. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I think one of the other issues that they don't like is the fact that these transactions are being conducted outside. So I don't actually think it's the original capital that's leaving that's their problem. It's the velocity of money that's the problem for the banks. The velocity of money is how many times that money circulates through the banking system or through the economy at large. What is generally happening is that money gets locked up, and then all the transactions are being done in a way that's outside of the banking system, which is what we all wanted, and they don't like it.
And it's parked in some cold wallet somewhere where they can't get access to it. People have taken custodianship of their own assets.
Well, the bank has lost control of that money, and therefore the power of that comes with it, and obviously the growth that comes with it.
And, I was teaching this in a very popular course over the last few weeks, and people don't realize how vulnerable they are to the banks. One mouse stroke froze my bank accounts.
Yeah, I know.
One little mouse stroke. Even when I called them, went through all the hoops and said, hey, look, this is all the know your client rules. I've done this. I provided this information. I even had, someone fly in from overseas to provide their signatures and stuff like that. And you know who I'm talking about, Shaq. This situation was going on. And then I get warnings if you don't comply by this time. I was getting the electronic emails coming through. I'm saying, I ring them up, say, hey, I'm getting this message. Oh, don't worry about it. Just ignore it. It's an error. Right? Even through all that, they still froze it. I'm like, you don't realize how vulnerable you are, guys.
Yeah, exactly right. If you've got your accounts blocked and locked that way, you can't put food on the table for your family. It's that fundamental.
To their credit, they sorted it out fairly quickly, but it was a wake-up call for me going,
but they sorted it out quickly on their terms. So I've just had this situation. I've had multiple situations go wrong for me in the last month or so. It's just tearing my bloody hair out. I have to go for another hair replacement at this rate. So we've had... just the last few days, I had actually the same bank that you're referring to, Derek, who has now restricted my access to my account because of some fraud alert. You ring them, and in order to be able to get through to the place, you have to log on to your internet banking, which you can't do because it's under a fraud alert. I'm like, what the hell, right? Then the other one that I had, and I probably shouldn't repeat this on air, but I'm going to because we all know what I'm like. I transferred some money from New Zealand from an account that was held in my name. Now, that bank that I transferred it from to the bank that I transferred it to, it's the same parent company, right? So it's the same bank. It's a subsidiary of the bank that I transferred it to here in Australia. And I'm still waiting now. I've been waiting now for, I think, a month for this money to be released to me. So last week I get talking to them, and I'm like, "Come on, what the hell?" They're like, "Oh, well, we just need to know a little bit more about, the person that sent it to you and all that." I said, "The account's in my name." And like, okay, and how, like, do you know this person well? I'm like, "It's me." Like, "Oh, how long have you known the person?" I'm like, "You're not listening to it. It's me. It's in my name. Look at the name on the transaction. I've known the person my entire life. What are you talking about?" So then the person goes, "Oh, well, can I ask you what sort of relationship you have with the person?" I said, "It's a sexual one. It's a sexual relationship, but it's not monogamous." And they're like, "Oh, okay, well, I better transfer you through to the supervisor." And then they're like, "Oh, that wasn't really a very appropriate comment." I said, "You've been sitting on my money for a freaking month, for goodness sake." So, yeah, I probably should have said that, but I really shouldn't repeat it on air. But the hell with it. Like, these banks just drive me up the bloody wall. Anyway, that was my rant over.
Jack, that same bank, right, that we're talking about, they mucked up one of my payments from one of my clients in Europe, right? I said to them, listen, they gave me all the information, right? It would take absolutely no ownership that they may have given the information incorrectly. So this cost my client over 250 euros to get their money back, to try just to wire it to me. And I go and I say, look, this was a fairly substantial amount of money. I'm going to be late in paying my loans to you this month because you guys have mucked it up so much. And then the business bank that turns around and says, would you like to apply for financial hardship? It's like, you got to be kidding me. No ownership over the problem. No ownership.
No.
I'm trying to do the right thing and just give you heads up. Hey, you're slowing my cash flow here, but the money's coming because you stuffed it up. They want me to apply for.
There's a comment that I just saw, if we can bring that back up there, about how if the banks operated a particular way. Let's have a look at that. Bring that up on their big screen so we can see it, because we're all getting old and blind. This is, again, great comments from Josh. And Josh, we need to talk about your little candidacy thing. I think we get him in on the couch very, very soon, coming up for the elections in March. If we operated like the banks, lending money we don't have and charging interest on it, we would be put in prison for fraud. So true.
So there was actually a Supreme Court case in the US. I can't remember the name of it off my head, but it was a case where the guy actually took the banks to court and said, "I'm not going to pay my home loan off because they actually didn't lend me anything." Right? It was just a made-up thing. And if memory serves me correctly, he'd sort of won the case and then it got overturned, or so. I can't remember. There's a Supreme Court ruling on it. But you're right. I mean, the banks are doing this. They're lending stuff that they don't have and charging you interest on it. And to be fair, if that is a reasonable enough process, even if you were to get away from fractional reserve banking, you would still see this kind of thing happen because that's just part of how the banking system works. And if you didn't do that, it would be problematic. However, you could do it by ways of credits and debits without necessarily needing to have a bank charge interest and take their cut as a result of just them facilitating the transaction. And if you did think that that was appropriate and necessary, I hate to support the government here, but if you do think that, let the people, the community at large, facilitate the transactions and earn the revenue from that, rather than letting private enterprise do it, if and only if private enterprise has monopoly powers. Now, if you were to say to me, we're going to break up the banks, or we're going to make it far easier for small people to be able to start their own banks, and we're going to absolutely force competition to this market. You're going to have 5,000 banks around Australia, and they're going to be mum and dad operations, right?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I'm all good with that. What we have instead is we have a monopolized situation, and it creates an unfair distortion in the market, and we're seeing that across pretty much the whole world.
Well, this happens in every single industry. The government has made it so that pretty much no matter what trade you're in, there's a monopoly, okay? Whether it be banking, whether it be media, whether it be the food industries, all of these things, all of the small players are being pushed out and out and out. And, that to me, that's completely against democracy and a free market, obviously. But, and this is, again, why we have to think when we vote and do our research on the people we vote.
But it's all changing. And this is the thing.
Yep.
With Trump's election, right, it changes the whole spectrum on so many different industries. All the industries that we don't trust, right? look at politics, right?
Okay.
It's disrupting that.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the health industry.
Yep.
Right? We've just touched on that. That has sadly gotten under so much scrutiny, but probably rightly so, because people are going, well, who's running it, right? Who is the legalized drug cartel behind the pharmaceuticals, right? And then there is the media, right? Your favorite one.
Oh, I love them.
Right. Trump has destroyed mainstream media through this entire process.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Because what he's done, he actually went and spent 3 hours with Joe Rogan doing this. His son, his youngest son, what's his name?
Well, which one?
Barron.
His youngest, Barron.
Barron, the one who's like 10 foot tall.
Barron's saying, Dad, you've got to talk to these guys. They're really cool.
Yeah.
Dad, you've got to talk to these guys. So he hit the younger market by going to that.
And it shows that he takes other people's advice. Look at that.
Yeah,
Right?
he was very open to that. And he would do that. And he got about, I think, 430 million views on Rogan's show
I
alone.
think it could be a little bit more than CNN, just a touch, just a little bit.
Kamala tried to get a podcast going, and they got about 600,000 to 800,000 views and that sort of thing on that one.
Wow.
And so the media has changed because people are just going, we want the uncut, uncensored version of news, which you can get on a 3-hour, 40-minute interview.
Well, there's nowhere to hide in
podcast,
that, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not edited.
Look what we do here. This is, again, we have conversations. It's not edited. There's no preset questions that we all work with. This is the absolute future of how, the media, I think we almost need to lose that word. The way people get their information has changed completely, and we have so much to thank Trump for on that one. The independent media around the world, we are taking over. It's got to the point now where people now, I believe that the current figures are 20% of people get their information from the mainstream media. 20%.
It's that older generation.
This election win from him, he earned it. It wasn't just a complete repudiation of what the Democrats have done over the last 4 years, and I would argue for decades now. It was actually also that he earned it. He went and spoke to different people. He went on podcasts. He did his rallies. He did interviews. He did the whole lot. And she did. I mean, she still, by the way, hasn't had a press conference. She's the only person I can think of that's ever run to be a president who's never held a press conference. Who does that, right? So, she's been so phony, but he's actually gone out there and he's spoken to people from all different walks of life. So Joe Rogan, a few years ago, said he didn't want to give Donald Trump a platform. Then he gives him a platform, and what does he end up doing? He ends up endorsing Donald Trump. Yeah. Elon Musk, former Democrat, and Elon Musk's mother, Maya Musk, is actually out there as well doing interviews about why she switched from the Democrats. Right? People are leaving the Democrats in droves. What did we get told about this election? We were told that women across America were going to vote against him because of Roe v. Wade being overturned. Yet he got 52% of the women's vote. And across all the other ethnicities, including black women, he got a higher vote total than what he had gotten before. She performed worse in almost every major. Actually, I think black women are the exception. She performed worse across every major demographic than what Joe Biden did. So, what are we suggesting? And they are. Black men are what? Racist? No, they're not racist. They're misogynist. The Latinos? Oh no, they're misogynist as well. What about the women? Oh well, it's internalized misogyny. Like, come on. There's no kind of like, okay, we've done the wrong thing. People don't like what we're saying, what we're doing. People have been screaming at us for years to close the border. People have been screaming at us for years that the transgender stuff has gone too far. We need to roll back a few things, and we've ignored them. No, none of that. It's all just hate. Yeah, well, you know what? What you've done now is you've given him everything. He's got the House, he's got the Senate, he's got the Supreme Court. If the two Justices Alito and Clarence Thomas decide that they're going to retire early, then he gets to renominate two of those. And there's talk of Sotomayor having health issues. So if she goes the next 4 years, he gets another seat, which means that you're going to have a Supreme Court which is 7-2 or 8-1, 8-1 conservative. That's going to be like that for decades. And you know who's to blame? The Democrats. Don't come blaming everybody else. This was your ridiculous behavior and your refusal to listen to anybody. So I think it's brilliant, personally.
I think it's also the machine behind the Democrats that's really come into the limelight, out of the darkness, and people have realized, she was reading a script. She could not take off the cuff questions. She couldn't go off script and basically, do a normal interview.
Well,
It
how
was
can you
very
do that?
controlled. And of course, then they ask, well, what was the uncut version of the interview that she had with this broadcaster? We'd like to see the whole file, please.
We don't want to unburden her from what has been. Okay, come on, we're past all of that.
But the really positive thing about all of this, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, I thought you finished. Go.
I was just going to say this. I think you're absolutely right. The thing that we've now discovered, I think that so many people have now had it so blatantly in front of them, is the machine. Okay, it is not about the person. You're not voting for the person. You're voting for the machine. Now, if that's the case, say in the case of Trump, look at the people he surrounded himself with. Right, these are such quality human beings who are experts in all their fields. You look and you think about what, as I say, Elon Musk will do probably, well, I would say to the bureaucratic class, right? Will he do what he did with Twitter? I saw the comment come up before. It's a brilliant comment. It'll just change so much with the efficiency of things. You've got Kennedy, who's going to go after the food industry and the health industry and all that. This is a massive seismic change in the way that America lives, and therefore, because guess what? Okay, America gets the syphilis, Australia gets the flu, right? We get the cold here. Okay, this will change our political and our economic structure here in Australia, rather. We always react to the US. So when people say, oh, it's got nothing to do with us, it has everything to do with us here in Australia.
It's interesting too with space exploration, because Elon Musk is part of course, that Republicans now, and nobody's got the technology that Elon has, where he can capture a rocket as it's coming back down again, and catch it with
that was incredible. That was incredible footage, right?
The launch pad.
Just absolutely amazing.
And Trump asked him, "Can China do this? No. Can the Russians do this? No. Can America do this? No. Just me." And
how embarrassing is it for NASA that they can't even bring the astronauts back down? They've got to get Elon Musk to do it. How embarrassing is that? Can I just quickly say something though to one of the things that you were saying, Aaron? What has happened now is that the people are finally beginning to see things for what they are. And people are now beginning to ask questions. And they're like, hey, why is our food supply so bad? Hey, why do we only have a handful of pharmaceutical companies? Why is it that all our penicillin isn't manufactured anywhere in the West, but it's only being manufactured in 3 companies in China? Right? I've got nothing against China. I actually don't. But surely we should be able to produce our own generic medications in our own countries. But why can't we do it? Talking about manufacturing, is it really that much cheaper to do things overseas, given that a lot of this stuff is done by machine anyway? Why aren't we manufacturing here? Why is it that we're shipping our iron ore over to another country and then shipping back to steel when we know that the real profit margin is made in the value add? Why are we doing that? Right? What's happened to our shipping industry? What's happened to our car manufacturing? Why can't we get clothes made here? Right? Again, food, banking, the whole lot. People are now asking questions. And what it shows is people do not have any faith or trust in media. They don't have any faith or trust in the government. They don't trust the big corporations. Why do we only have Coles and Woolworths? You can go to the farmers market, if we just use example here in Sydney. You can go to not the farmers market, the Sydney, whatever it is, the Sydney markets, right, every morning. You can rock up there at 3:00 in the morning, and a friend of mine, I just asked him, how much does a certain thing cost? And it was 20% of the price of what you'd pay at the grocery store. 20%, right? But there is a few places where what they'll do is you place sort of an order and they'll go and get these boxes. You give them a little bit extra to cover their time and effort and whatever, and then they'll deliver it to you. And it costs you a fraction of what you'd pay at the big guys. Why don't we see that happening more, right? Why don't we see more direct farmer to consumer type things? Why do we only have a few toy manufacturers, for example? Mattel advocated for regulations that actually shut down a lot of the small toy manufacturers. So people that would just maybe had a garage and they made a few toys there or whatever, they couldn't actually comply with the safety regulations. And so therefore those toys have disappeared. You just have a handful of toy manufacturers now. And I can go on and on and on. The point is that people are now waking up to this and saying, okay, we've been had. And so the thing about capitalism and why capitalist societies do so well is because it allows everybody to be able to have a small business of their own or to work for a small business, right? But that has gone, and now it's all about climbing the corporate ladder. Well, I think now people are beginning to say, especially young people, are beginning to say, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be stuck in an office all day and then climb the corporate ladder, never get time to see my kids, and then I lose my relationship and all that. I've seen my parents do that. I don't want that sort of life. I want to have something new. I want to be able to afford to buy my own house. I want to be able to, do all those things for myself. And that's the real damage the Democrats ended up doing by pushing things as far as they did, is that they ignored all the warning signs along the way that people were fed up. And now you've got somebody in there who doesn't care at all about keeping the status quo, and everything's being challenged.
All right,
That should happen here as well.
2 years ago, I said it. I said things have to get worse before they're going to get better. It's like gold getting purified. The heat's got to be turned on for the scum to get wiped away, and that's exactly how it's played out.
Mate, we've come to the end of the show. I notice you've got some cryptocurrency prices up there. Geez, it seems to be up and to the right a bit with a few things. Quite a bit going on there.
Yeah, well, in the last week, Bitcoin's risen by 17.44%.
In a week. Okay, it's pretty fantastic. Okay. I think this is a great time to let's look at something just magnificent. It's called optimism. All right. And I think that, you've certainly been saying this to me over the last few years, mate. And we look at all these things, look at the opportunity that is in front of us right now. Go out there with an open heart and open mind and go, yeah, I'm going to grab this with both hands. I'm going to take this opportunity, but also feel the optimism. As I say, I feel, and Travis off camera will laugh at this, I feel lighter, Travis, right now because, I think that a lot of pressure has been taken off the world with the threat of war and all kind of thing. With Trump coming in, I think it is a very, very great time to be alive. We just had to get through we had to purify the gold, mate. Yeah.
And look, there's still a lot.
I've never been more optimistic. Let me tell you, I have never been more optimistic about world affairs, about Australia, certainly about America. Fantastic. I'm going to get a new one of these. This is from 2016.
All right, that is the end of the show. It has been the Greater Wealth here on Edge Radio Australia. Look, thank you for all the comments coming in. Really appreciate this. You can catch the replay on Sunday at 5 p.m. But in the meantime, you can obviously go and watch it whenever you like on all of the social media sites. Please help us out with the old, if you can get onto, say, YouTube for argument's sake, and if you could like and share, tell a friend, all those sorts of things, because we are growing beautifully and we really need your help to go forward. That's the end of the show. It's Edge Radio Australia, the Greater Wealth.